that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or current Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today, I have for you Book 5 thoughts, not full review, of Supernatural Encounters by Joe Bongiorno. Speaking of which, because not all of you may have actually seen some of my other update videos, Legends Con happened, so I now have my Legends Con exclusive hardcover of the novel by Joe Bongiorno. This is art from the book, which you can find. There was also a paperback you'll probably see online from other places, which has a particularly, I don't know if I can find it, but it's a very cool, more dark, horror-esque, at least that's how it feels, cover. And then, of course, you also have the different variation cover, depending on if you help fund the book, which I'll be completely honest, I did not. I think I learned about Supernatural Encounters in like the last month or two that you could contribute, but I just didn't, because I think it was like $50 or something, and at the time I didn't feel like dropping that, or it was something like that, I forget. But I've always given it my full support, other than my money. But I've been seeing it coming, and the cover that people are getting in the mail looks really cool. But yeah, this is the Legends Con exclusive I got. So it's pretty cool. Now, for those of you who don't know, though I don't know why you're watching this particular video, which would be kind of insane of you to do, you had to either be a backer, or you had to go to Legends Con, where you could get exclusive copies of the book. It's not being sold online legally, like you can't get it on Amazon or anywhere else, but what you can do, if you never got a chance to get a physical copy, is you can read for free at all times with no cost to you on Joe Bongiorno's website, StarWarsTimeline.net. So, just to clarify that. But we are on Book 5, The Second Shadow. And I have a couple notes here, copious amounts of notes. But again, these are my thoughts, so I'm not necessarily giving you a review of this section. I'm just going to give you my overall vibes and deals with it. But Joe told me to be honest about my thoughts and opinions, because I met Joe and Joe Bongiorno, and I hung out with him quite a little bit, like outside of like his panel and everything. Like he was hanging out with me, Marcel Brennan, a couple other people, Arthur Lowry, who watches our videos and is on Discord, amazing guy, and Brennan's mom, and we were talking there. We got coffee with Joe, me and Marcel, we did that, so that was cool. When there was another panel going on, about, I forget what it was about, but Joe was actually sitting, watching the panel, and I sat with him for a little bit until he had to go and prepare for his next panel, so that was kind of awesome. But yeah, I consider Joe a friend. I think he's really cool. But he did say to be honest if I felt like there's anything. So far, I just want to say from what I've read, and this may not necessarily be a diss, but a lot of times there'll be sections of it, especially when dealing with like humans, where stuff will kind of go over my head, and I'm like, what was that about? And then I'll keep moving on, which I could do my research, and I probably wouldn't be as confused, but just going it one time through, I'm like, what? And then also, and I don't even dislike it, but it feels a little unnecessary at times. We get these connections made where I don't know what it really adds to the Star Wars universe outside of being a thing, which, I mean, it's fine, but so far those are my only real complaints about this book. People have been complaining about it being, what's the term that I've been seeing online? It's pretentious, which in of itself is a very subjective term. Like, you could say objectively, this is written poorly, you can say you enjoy it personally and still say there's things about it objectively that are poor. But the word pretentious is a very subjective term, because there's a lot of emotion behind the term pretentious. So I've seen that around online. And I think these people just haven't read things like The Silmarillion, for example, or H.P. Lovecraft. You may not like those styles, but that's not entirely pretentious. Edgar Allan Poe, even. I mean, if you've read any of these people in your life, then you know it's a lot like that. It harks back to that. I've read H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft is hard to read. There's a lot of big words, and a lot of the ways he goes about communicating information and action and story is very unnecessary. H.P. Lovecraft would be like, the great abyss of this galactic gel ooze. It was pontificating and suffocating and deranging and it will have an entire paragraph describing this one thing. And at the end of it all, you still don't even fully comprehend what it's being described to you. So you have things like that with H.P. Lovecraft, and H.P. Lovecraft does that all the time. And then the Silmarillion is another good example. Now, there are clear inspirations in this book that Joe's deriving his work from. So either you understand that and you just don't like it, and you can say, well, I personally don't care for it. But to say that it's objectively bad, I just don't think you've done enough reading. Maybe stop reading Star Wars and go read some actual novels. Funny coming from me, right? Oh, wait, but I have read other things. I just talk about Star Wars because that's where my passion lies, right? Because that's what got me into this community of EU people, was talking about Star Wars. But yes, I read other things. I have. I may not be the best writer on Discord or whatever, but, that's just because I'm lazy. But anyway, this is all long short to say that don't use pretentious when talking about somebody's writing, if you're trying to talk about it in an objective sense. Joe's awesome, and the book is written beautifully, in my opinion. It's, so far, from what I've read, it is a top 3 Expanded Universe book. I'd say it's Traitor by Matthew Stover, and then it's a toss-up between this and Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. Shoot me, kill me, whatever you want. It's that good. Anyway, so let's actually get into the meat of what this book deals with. So we have Typho Gem, the Cthulhu-looking character, and he is quite unhappy with the Celestials and the Architects and everything, and he's trying to orchestrate his own thing. And even though he's kind of separate from like the shadow beings that we've been seeing, but he is trying to do his own sort of thing. We also have the origin of the Bandagora in here, the cult, force sect, or whatever you want to call it, that we see in the Bounty Hunters video game, who are also a part of the Mall Lockdown novel. We also have the origins of the Anzati, which is the worst part of the book, because it showed me the creation of these awful beings that don't deserve to live, and they all deserve to die and perish. And I don't care if that's xenophobic, because they put their snot things up your nose, and they suck your brain juices. They all deserve to die, because we have not seen one redeeming Anzati in the entire franchise. They all are evil and want to hurt you. I don't like them. You can't make me like them. I will never like them. But yes, we get the origins of the Anzati in here, which is cool. I believe in this section too, if I'm remembering correctly, there's an anagram from my friend Brennan within here as well, as one of the Anzati. So that's kind of cool. We also deal a lot with the Silentium and the Abanor, which is really cool. These are, of course, the 2 machine-like races. They aren't machines. They are, they're like, I don't know how to describe it, but they weren't created by anything, right? They're not droids in like the classical sense. They're more like the, not the Geth, the beings from Mass Effect, the Reapers. No, more like that in that sense. We also deal with a lot of the early Sith. I'll say this is another part that I was a bit confused about, because so far I've not heard particular tenets that ascribe to the Sith philosophy. And so far it still seems like we're far in the past, like before anything detailed in the expanded universe. So I'm assuming that whenever we are delving into Sith history, we are dealing with the red-skinned beings, and we have not touched with the Jedi Sith variant where they come to the Korriban and take over. Like, I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe we are, and I've just gotten confused along the way. But that is something that's been a bit hard to fully comprehend what it is in those sections. Because I'm pretty sure this is all supposed to be red-skinned Sith, but then there's also things that they talk about. I'm like, well, maybe it's not. So that's the thing I'm a little bit confused about. And I don't know if that's the writing or just because I'm stupid. Maybe mix the two, but probably just because I'm stupid. So, there's that. We also learn, this is actually pretty cool, we learn that Callista's ability, like, that to put her soul essence into a machine, like we see in Children of the Jedi, was originally a Sith ability called Machu Daru. And this is also, there are variations of this used later on in the galactic history, because we got Callista using her Jedi version of that. You know, then you also have like these weird sort of kind of force things, but they're different, because of the Sissy Rook that transfer your, for all intents and purposes, your soul into a robot, but it's like a perverted, lesser version of that. There's this amazing part of the book where there's, maybe I'm overhyping, I really enjoyed it, this section where I think Tidlani, Horlus, Splendid App, and I'm forgetting one. I think that's it. But they talk about how are we any better than humans? In this particular section of the book, which I really, really enjoyed. It was a really good section. We also have an interlude section which deals with droid rights, which is a thing that has been only ever hinted at in Star Wars, but never given its full due. We never had a full story about all droid liberation. We probably never will, in new canon or otherwise, but it's a particularly interesting topic to address. I mean, sure, there's multiple stories and movies which have done this and be kind of ripping off Blade Runner or whatever, I guess, but it is a thing, because it chronicles an interview that Arlon Hextrafon had with R2-D2 and C-3PO shortly after the events of Episode 4. And they talk about, like, do you feel things? Like, do you feel? Like, they even take tests and stuff, and of course C-3PO feel. Like, he's the most human droid we've ever seen. You know, and it's an interesting, it's a thing that gets brought up in the actual novels, like A New Jedi Order. I think it gets brought up a bit and in a couple other places, but it's never really dived into. But, you know, it seems pretty loose and dry that C-3PO is a person, as far as whatever that means is concerned. So, it was a great part of the book, though. I enjoyed it. We learned something fascinating, which brings a whole new perspective to me on Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor by Matthew Stover. Because this book, Supernatural Encounters, tells us that Black Hole / Chroma / Shadow Spawn, while working, because sometimes, even though we're talking about the ancient past, it will say, like, oh, and in the future, this guy would do this. You know, just real quick mention. But Black Hole traveled to the Shadow Realm. Now, we know very little, even still, and I'm now 600-something pages in, we still know very little about this Shadow Realm. It's very shrouded in mystery. But the Shadow Realm involves a lot of these shadowy, dark, demon-like beings. He travels there. Not for long, but much like Eldritch, H.P. Lovecraft horrors, comes back not the same. But my brain lit up like a Christmas tree, thinking about this after the fact. Because what do we get from Shadowspawn throughout Mindor? What does he constantly harp on about? Because he's not talking about the dark side of the Force. He's talking about the dark, and whatever that is meant to mean. And then you also think about Episode 3 novelization, the dark. But is it really about the dark side of the Force? About the dark side of people? It could be a mix of all three, something more. The dark is always patient. But Shadowspawn exclusively talks about the dark as a separate entity from that of the dark side. He says that when Palpatine, or he speculates when Palpatine was trying to destroy the Republic and destroy the Jedi, the dark was on his side. The dark helped him. The dark gave him more power. The dark helped him succeed. But then he started to build again, to build something from the ashes, to build his glorious empire. And this is when Shadowspawn says that the dark left him, because instead of destroying, he was trying to build. What if there's more to this than I thought? Not just a different philosophy, but something vastly worse. What if Shadowspawn is talking about the dark forces behind the supernatural stuff of the universe that have been doing stuff throughout the 500 pages of Supernatural Encounters that we've been reading? The dark is always patient. The dark wants to help Palpatine succeed in destroying everything, but not to build. And so once Palpatine starts doing that, they abandon him. It's interesting to think about. Especially because it's both Matthew Stover works, but the dark is always patient. The dark is always kind. It's obviously poetic, but what if it has triple meanings? You know, like, what if the dark actually is something more? And we do have actual, legitimate accounts of Chronal going insane. Not really explaining why. He just does. Why? Maybe he saw something his mere mortal mind just couldn't comprehend. Which then works for me, because this, I think, is one of the biggest things that inspired me, because what if Jacen Solo, during his 5-year sojourn, learned more than we were led to believe? And it changed him. Future time. But anyway, so I love that section. It got me thinking a lot, so that was really cool. Howard the Duck. So I don't think that Supernatural Encounters, Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, is claiming that the events of the movie Howard the Duck by George Lucas happened. What this book does seem to imply is that the villains that Howard the Duck fights in that movie are now canonized within Star Wars. Those alien beings exist. And that's as far as that goes. But I noticed the reference, I noticed the name, and I looked it up on Google. Sure enough, it was the bad guys from Howard the Duck. But I don't think it's trying to imply that there's a Howard the Duck running about. I don't think it's trying to imply that the movie itself, plot point, happened. I think it's just trying to bring the alien design into the franchise. And for that, I don't mind. But I can see why people be like, and the next controversial thing, androids and synths. Blade Runner. We get stuff talking about the same sort of androids and stuff, replicants that are mentioned, but this is all on Terra 1. It says specifically on Terra 1 these things are going on. Now again, Terra 1 is in our galaxy, and as far as the book has made us understand, you can't just travel between the two. You can't just free willy go from Earth to Coruscant. Like, you just can't do that because they're in two separate galaxies. You can't do that. And again, I still don't think it's saying necessarily that the plot points of Blade Runner happened in the Star Wars universe. Like, you could say it did if you wanted to. You could be like, I'm going to include Blade Runner into the canon now. I don't think that's necessarily what Joe's trying to imply. He's just using names and concepts, like Replicant and stuff on Terra 1. But I don't think he's necessarily trying to say that the movie itself is canon. I don't think that's what he's trying to do. Now, again, these are probably the most controversial parts of the book, but they're very small portions of the entire thing. But that being said, it's in there. I don't necessarily mind it. I don't know why, though, it's included. I say it's like a minor issue with the novel. I don't understand why this needs to be here. It seems very unnecessary. I mean, it's cool, but it's unnecessary. So if anything, that's probably my biggest gripe with the book so far. But it's such a minor thing in the grand scheme. Like, you have 1,000 pages to get through, and this is maybe a couple paragraphs, and you're going to make that be like the whole thing? Like, no. But that being said, again, I still don't think it's him going, oh, fanfiction, this is canon now, this is canon now, this is canon now. He's making aspects of these things work into Star Wars. And I don't mind that. I found Eckhart's Ladder's reference in here. Eckhart's Ladder is a YouTuber, but I found his anagram in here, so that was cool. It is interesting that there's religious suppression dealt with in here. We're trying to pretend like the Celestials don't exist. It's actually kind of fascinating that they want to, like, it's like today, like the humans are like, well, we haven't seen these Celestials in so many years. They used to be super active. Like, everybody used to, like, know for, like, a certainty they existed. And then they kind of backed off more and more, and they backed off. So now people are like, do they even exist? I don't think so. Why should we have to do this? You know, so they're trying to, like, repress it and, like, be like, you're not allowed to talk about these gods anymore. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. Shut your mouth. You are a danger to society by claiming that this is real, you know. So, very good parallels to today, but that was interesting. We also have origins of the first Jedi Bendu, which I think we see in the opening panels to Dawn of the Jedi. We also get an alien reference. Again, this is also on Terra 1. I don't think this means that the movie of Alien happened. It's the same thing as when some character gets into a taxi in the Blade Runner movie, and on the computer screen is a Wayland Corporation logo. Now, you could go, well, now that's canon. Now Alien and Blade Runner exist in the same universe. Which, I mean, theoretically, you could probably do that. But the movie's not explicitly saying that. It's just more of an Easter egg. So that's kind of what you get here. You get mentions of the Wayland Corporation. Now, does that mean it's the same Wayland from Alien? Or does that mean that these xenomorphs now exist in Star Wars? Not necessarily. I mean, you could be a fan and headcanon those things in if you wanted to, and try to make that work, but the book does not go, oh, xenomorphs, You know, if it was basically giving me a plot summary of the Alien movie, you'd be like, okay, well, it's just saying that the Alien movie is canon, or Howard the Duck is canon, or Blade Runner is canon, but it's not doing that. It's just taking little aspects and throwing it in there, either as an Easter egg or whatever. So I don't dislike that. I can understand why people will be a little frustrated with it, but it's not inherently an issue. You know what I mean? Woztek and his children. The architects have kept messing things up in the universe. I mean, apart from them, you still have the Shadow Beings doing their thing, but as for the architects, they were like this rogue middle ground between a celestial and a demon, right? Something like in between there. So Woztek tries to talk to his family to stop, to be given a chance at redemption. And 2 of his children do, but 2 do not. And they get either destroyed or changed forever. Woztek promises that no Celestial will kill an offspring of Titlani's or anything. So, this is the beginning of something very important, and explains why, while we're introducing all these supernatural elements, why aren't some things handled differently behind the scenes in later series like Fate of the Jedi? Well, for one, he already promised that the Celestials would never harm one of his grandchildren, or one of the architect's children. So with that, move on to my second page of notes, where Woztek tries to convince his daughter to turn back to the light. His daughter considers it for a second, much like Dooku considers it for a second in Yoda Dark Rendezvous. But at the end of the day, her pride, her hubris, takes control, and she defies her father. And so her father strips her of her power and changes her into this eldritch horror blob nightmare. And she can only change artificial, because she used to be able to like shapeshift and change her appearance to whatever suited her, but now she can change the color of her eyes, remove however many eyes she has, remove how many tentacles she has, remove how many of this or that she has, but she can't actually change her form. She's stuck as something disgusting. And she sues on that hatred for a long time for what her father has done to her. But she still wants to create, so she uses all the love that remains in her to create something beautiful. One last, an actual, beautiful creation. Named Beilot, or Baelot. And when she creates this child with love, Titlani also perishes away. But here's something that caught my eye immediately. She names this child Baelot, or Bela. If you add an A to the beginning of that name and an H to the end of it, you get Abeloth. We'll see where that goes in the next book. Woztek is also eliminated within these sections of the book, which was crazy since he's been here since almost the beginning. We also know that the Kyber crystal is part of Titlani's heart. So all the stuff that happened in Mimban, in Split of the Mind's Eye, that gem, those crystals, are a fragment of Titlani's heart as it turns to a crystal stone. So that is interesting. We also learn that Lumiya's whip has a little bit of Titlani's heart within it. Now, here's where we start getting into super familiar territory, TCW and Fate of the Jedi. I noticed it almost instantly, and I had a hunch, and it was confirmed by the end of the chapter that I was correct. Eipha, E-I-P-H-A, Eipha, Nifal, N-I-P-H-A-L, and Elegast. Not Elegos, Elegast. Eipha is fortitude. Nifil is wisdom. Elegast is justice. They take on more human-like forms. This has become the age of the Thal-Yor, Dawn of the Jedi. And they promise to watch over things as the ones. Eipha is later be known as the Sun. Nifal would later be known as the daughter, and Elegast, father. Those three celestial beings from TCW, when Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka meet them, and later on in Fate of the Jedi when they get referenced. Here's another thing. This one I don't mind This one's actually completely fine with me, because you could theoretically do it on any planet you want. It doesn't fully commit to doing this, because it deals with, like, the first people that have to deal with it, and then they escape. So you could still necessarily say that it didn't happen all the way through, like, because what I'm saying is, like, the events of what I'm talking about have not happened. It's like an earlier prototype to that. So you could say that that movie happens later, or you could say, no, it's just taking that little bit of an element. But one of George Lucas's first films before Star Wars was THX. And so the oppression of humans, the reproductive system, not being allowed to do all that, and having their heads shaved, is brought up in Supernatural Encounters on a certain planet. But these people that we follow, I don't think are in the movie, and they escape. So, as at least semi-canonizing the events of THX, which is, to me, kind of cool, because it's a George Lucas work. It's very sci-fi, and I don't mind that one. We then jump from that to Hutt origins. We learn about how the Hutts came to be, which was very... I didn't really realize that was direction until the end when they mentioned them becoming Hutts, but it is what it is. But that was a very weird way to end it. But so far, that is what we have for Book 5 within Supernatural Encounters. A lot has been learned. A lot of information has been wrapped in my head. But so far, so good. Obviously, the most interesting moments for me were the dark stuff, because I love Shadows of Mindor. And, of course, all the stuff with the Ones, which I'm sure we're going to get a lot more of that moving forward, because Baylot is just Baylot right now. We have not even gotten to this monster that we see in Fate of the Jedi. Now, I could, I guess, be wrong, but I'm going to assume that is, for all intents and purposes, what will become Abeloth. But we'll see where that goes in the next book, because I think Book 6 is the final book in the entire thing, besides the epilogue. So, I guess we'll see. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed my thoughts, give a thumbs up, share episode a ton. I will do a full normal review once I've reviewed all the pages, and just give my general thoughts and feelings about the book. As I've kind of gone in depth with every book, I don't feel like it's necessary to kind of do that for my review, so it'll be a very non-spoiler kind of overall thoughts of it. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching these in-depth thoughts. You know, it's kind of just things I found interesting, or things that I thought were very important, you know, that I would jot down. But it's been a lot of fun so far. I'm very happy to own this book, basically. But if you can't, it's still worth the read digitally. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you.